Raleigh, North Carolina, November 3, 2006. Birch Leaf Drive, a quiet cul-de-sac, sits under a soft gray autumn sky. Lawns are neat, porches swept. One of those mornings where nothing stirs, except the wind rustling through bare oak branches. Inside one two-story house, something is off. The air is heavy. A purse rests untouched on the kitchen counter. A car is still parked in the garage. Somewhere in the house, a dog whimpers. At 12:10 p.m., Meredith Fisher pulls into the driveway. Her brother-in-law had called her, said he'd left some papers upstairs in the printer and didn't want his wife to find them. It sounded odd, but she came anyway. She lifts the broken garage door and steps inside. Right away, something feels wrong. Cold. Still. The lights are off. She calls her sister's name. No answer. The kitchen looks normal. Purse, phone, car keys, all there. But as she walks upstairs, something on the landing catches her attention. A dark red stain spreading across the floorboards, trailing into the bathroom. At first, she assumes it's paint. Or maybe hair dye. Her sister colored her hair often. But as she moves closer, a metallic smell rises. It doesn't dye. It's blood. Before we go any further into what really happened inside this house and how the final hours of a young, expectant mother became a mystery that would shake an entire community, make sure you're subscribed. And turn on the bell so you don't miss tomorrow's case. And drop a comment below. Where in the world are you watching from? It's incredible how far these stories travel. Tiny footprints, toddler-sized, stained and fading, run through the hallway toward the main bedroom. From the top of the stairs, Meredith sees her sister, face down on the floor, not moving. Blood is smeared on the wall, the closet door, the edge of the bed. Pillows lie scattered across the carpet. One holds a red shoe print. And then something moves. A soft sound from under the covers. A tiny voice, fragile and shaking. Mommy has booze. 2-year-old Cassidy Young crawls out from beneath the blanket. She's wearing pink pajamas. Her eyes are wide. She looks lost, scared. Meredith stands frozen for a beat, heart pounding. Then she gathers the child in her arms. Cassidy clings to her and whispers again, "Mommy has booze." Meredith steps into the hallway and calls 911. Her voice breaks. "I think my sister's dead," she says. There's blood. Everywhere. There are tiny bloody footprints. The dispatcher's tone sharpens. Is she breathing? Can you move her? But Meredith can't. She doesn't need to. Her sister is cold. Still, when police arrive, the scene speaks volumes. A struggle. A locked house. A woman, 5 months pregnant, left face down on her bedroom floor. A toddler left behind. That same day, Raleigh police begin one of the most heartbreaking investigations the city has ever seen. Because nothing inside 518 Birch Leaf Drive makes sense. Not the silence. Not the footprints. Not the missing jewelry. And not the husband who claims he was nowhere nearby when it happened. Michelle Marie Fisher was born on February 17, 1977, in New York. She was raised in Seville, a small Long Island town that smelled like salt water and sunscreen in the summer. A place where everyone seemed to know your name. Michelle's childhood was warm and busy cheer practice, schoolwork, long family dinners. Friends described her as someone with a quiet glow. Not just beautiful, but present. Michelle smiled with her whole face. She wasn't loud, but people gravitated to her. Teachers said she was focused, organized. The type of student who took color-coded notes and offered help before anyone asked. Friends called her dependable, steady. The person you'd call when something fell apart. She didn't rely on charm. Michelle put in the work. Whether it was a group project or a part-time job, she gave it her all. She was ambitious, but rooted. She wanted a real life, a career that meant something, a family to pour love into, a safe and peaceful home. Under her calm voice was a quiet strength. By the time she graduated high school, Michelle already had a direction. She didn't want flash. She wanted substance. Accounting and finance spoke to her, disciplined, logical, reliable. Just like her. So when it came time to move forward, she didn't hesitate. Michelle left New York for Raleigh, North Carolina, and enrolled at North Carolina State University. It was a leap. She left behind her familiar streets, her old support system. But she didn't look back. Raleigh in the late 90s was a city on the rise. New businesses, fresh energy, and room to grow. For Michelle, it was the start of something new. She buried herself in study-long nights, part-time jobs, and internships. Those who knew her in college say she walked with quiet confidence. She always seemed to know exactly where she was going. By her mid-20s, Michelle had completed both her bachelor's and master's degrees in accounting. She built her career slowly, step by step, never rushing, never cutting corners. Over time, people started to notice a pattern. Michelle was always the one who showed up. If a classmate needed notes, she shared them. If someone was going through a rough time, she listened. She remembered birthdays, helped with job applications, gave rides from the airport. She was the one people relied on. That steady instinct to care, to hold things together, would come to define her life in ways she never expected. February 2001. Raleigh is cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your skin the moment you open a bar door and step into warmth. Inside the poorhouse, the lights are low, the floor a little sticky, and laughter bounces from wall to wall. It's Michelle's birthday. She's 24, surrounded by friends. A rare night out after long hours at the office. She's sipping something red when a man at the next table knocks the drink over. He apologizes quickly, flustered, ordering her a replacement before she can say anything. His name is Jason Young. He's the kind of guy who fills a room without trying. Tall, athletic, talkative in a way that feels light at first. They start chatting. It's easy. Turns out, both went to NC State. Both knew the same hangouts, the same jokes. One conversation turns into another. An hour passes, then two. To anyone watching, they already looked like a couple. Jason was charming, funny, full of stories. But those who met him later through Michelle said something about him always felt unsettled. There was a trace of arrogance, especially after a few drinks. A kind of boyishness he hadn't grown out of. Michelle, in contrast, carried herself like someone who had. She was thoughtful, composed, the type who balanced her checkbook to the penny. Jason wasn't there yet. But he knew how to make her feel noticed. After that night, he started showing up more. Stopping by for coffee. Joining her on lunch breaks. Small visits that turned into hours. He made her laugh. And she relaxed around him. Within a few months, they were inseparable. He moved closer to her apartment. Before long, their toothbrushes shared the same cup. They hadn't even defined the relationship yet. It just happened. Some thought it was all too fast. By 2003, Michelle was pregnant. It wasn't part of the plan. When she found out, she cried. Not from regret, but from the sudden weight of it all. Jason didn't take it the same way. Friends remember him pacing, saying he wasn't ready yet, that they needed more time, but time wasn't something they had. Insurance was. So they got married quietly that same year. No big event. Just a courthouse ceremony. It wasn't about rings. It was about making sure the hospital bills would be covered. On March 29, 2004, their daughter Cassidy was born. Michelle's world shifted overnight. Every photo from that spring shows her glowing. Hair loose, baby in her arms, eyes bright with the kind of love that pulls everything else into the background. She called Cassidy her miracle, her joy. Jason's adjustment looked different. He was proud, yes, but distant. Part of him still clung to the carefree version of himself he hadn't fully let go. He liked being the fun one, the silly parent. But the daily routine wore on him. Michelle kept things structured: schedules, lists, routines. Jason leaned on impulse. The difference started out small. She'd tidy up after him. He'd roll his eyes. But over time, it grew. Their lives began moving at two different speeds. Michelle was steady, focused on creating a peaceful, stable home for Cassidy. Jason was restless, often looking for something outside that structure. By 2005, they'd moved into a new house on Birch Leaf Drive, in a neighborhood called Enchanted Oaks, a name that sounded like a promise. The street wound through tall trees. Lawns were trimmed. Evenings were quiet, except for sprinklers or laughter from nearby porches. For Michelle, it felt like progress, a place that meant safety, stability. The house had extra rooms for guests, for a nursery, a home office, and wide windows that filled the space with light. She decorated it carefully. Cassidy's room in soft pinks, a guest room downstairs just for her mom. Her mother visited often, sometimes for a night, sometimes for longer. She loved being close to Michelle, helping with Cassidy, cooking meals, giving her daughter the kind of everyday support every young mom quietly hopes for. To Michelle, her mother's presence felt safe and comforting. To Jason, it felt like pressure. He saw her family's involvement as something else, as interference. Every visit, every call, every comment from her mom felt to him like a reminder that he wasn't the one in charge. And eventually, the quiet discomfort became something louder. Arguments began to fill the background of the home. Friends heard them on phone calls. Family overheard them through the walls. Michelle's mom, Linda, knew more than she ever wanted to. Jason's temper was short. His mood could shift suddenly, from lighthearted to frustrated in seconds. His voice would rise. His hands would move sharply, fast enough to make the space around him feel tense. People remembered seeing remotes hurled, doors slammed, dishes cracked against countertops. Michelle tried to keep things steady, but her fatigue started to show in subtle ways. The way her smile would fade when he cut her off. The way she avoided eye contact when he made a dismissive remark. Eventually, she opened up to her sister Meredith and to her mom. She didn't know how much more she could hold on. She wanted to keep the family whole, but it was getting harder. Meanwhile, Jason resented how much of his life felt exposed to Michelle's family. He accused her mom of meddling, said Meredith always took sides, and told Michelle she couldn't think for herself. The divide between them grew. Slow, invisible, but constant, like a quiet fault line waiting to shift. Then came 2006, a turning point. Michelle was pregnant again. It was unexpected, but it gave her hope. They planned a weekend to visit Jason's relatives in western North Carolina, a few hours drive through winding mountain roads. It should have been a normal trip. It wasn't. That afternoon, their car veered off a curve and plunged nearly 100 feet down a steep embankment, landing partly in a shallow creek. They both survived, shaken, bruised, terrified. Michelle, only 5 weeks pregnant, lost the baby a few days later. The miscarriage hit hard. She blamed herself, the road, the timing, everything beyond her control. Friends said she went quiet for weeks, trying to process what it meant. Jason reacted differently, more distantly. He wanted to move forward, but Michelle couldn't. That loss became another wall between them, and neither of them knew how to scale it. By the next spring, Michelle was pregnant again, and this time, things looked hopeful. Doctors said everything was progressing well. By fall of 2006, She was 5 months along, expecting a baby boy. From the outside, it looked like a fresh start. They hosted dinners, smiled in photos, chatted at neighborhood barbecues. It all looked fine from far enough away. But inside, it wasn't. Jason's mood shifted often. Some days he was warm. Others, cold and distant. He stayed out later, made excuses, and guarded his phone more than before. Michelle felt it. She didn't need proof, but it was there. In his emails, his phone records, the digital traces of a life lived in 2 parts. He was messaging other women, telling one that he loved her. Call logs later showed he spent as much time on the phone with someone else as he did with Michelle. He reconnected with an ex-fiancée. He flirted with women on business trips. Even crossed a line with one of Michelle's old sorority friends. At home, Michelle held herself together. She worked, cared for Cassidy, prepared for the baby. She kept the house clean, paid bills, wrote thank you notes to visiting friends. She wanted to believe there was still a future for them on Birch Leaf Drive, but the foundation had shifted. The trust had cracked. And beneath the hum of ordinary sounds, the cartoons, the dishwasher, the soft buzz of a baby monitor, something else was present, not loud, but dangerous. The slow, steady erosion of something sacred. Thursday, November 2nd, 2006. Evening light settles gently over Birch Leaf Drive, that soft, golden glow that filters through blinds before the sun disappears. Inside, Michelle moves through her house with practiced calm. She makes dinner, picks up Cassidy's toys from the rug, hums softly as the oven timer beeps. The air smells like pasta sauce and baby shampoo. Just after 6, her friend Shelley, a former sorority sister, arrives with takeout and a bottle of soda. They sit at the kitchen table, talking about work, about pregnancy, about little things and big things. Cassidy toddles between them, curls bouncing, her laughter filling the open space. That night, Michelle smiles more than she has in weeks. Upstairs, Jason moves back and forth in the bedroom, packing a small suitcase. He tells Michelle he has a sales meeting in Virginia early the next morning. His new job with a medical software company keeps him traveling. And this trip, he says, is just another routine stop. He plans to drive halfway, check into a Hampton Inn, grab a quick dinner, then finish the drive in the morning. After the meeting, he'll stop by his mother's before coming home for the weekend. Every word sounds calm, familiar. Michelle nods. She doesn't question it. They've had their tension lately, but she's learned to pick her battles. If he needs space, she gives it. If he wants to feel trusted, she plays along. She finishes clearing dinner plates while he carries his bag out to the car. The door closes gently behind him, almost lost beneath the sound of the TV. By 9 p.m., the house feels quiet again. Michelle and Shelley curl up on the couch, Grey's Anatomy flickering in the background. Cassidy, fresh from a bath, climbs into Michelle's lap, clutching a stuffed giraffe. They sit in a peaceful rhythm, the hum of the show, the soft patter of rain beginning outside. A night that feels safe. Around 10, Shelley gathers her bag. But as she reaches for the door, something gives her pause. A flicker of unease she can't explain. The street outside looks darker than usual. The corners of the yard swallowed in shadow. That kind of dark that makes you suddenly aware of your own breathing. She hesitates, then turns to Michelle. "Will you walk me out?" She asks. Michelle gives a soft laugh, but nods. They step into the chilly air. Leaves crunch underfoot. The wind carries the smell of pine and damp earth. The neighborhood is still. No cars, no voices. Just the glow of distant porch lights. Shelley glances back once more before driving off. Later, that feeling, that quiet instinct, will replay in her mind again and again. When her taillights fade, Michelle locks the door, turns out the lights, and moves through the dark house. Upstairs, Cassidy is already drifting to sleep, a small hand tangled in her blanket. Michelle checks on her, tucks her in again, and lingers at the doorway a moment longer than usual. The house is silent, except for the quiet tick of the wall clock and the TV. She forgot to turn off downstairs by 10:30 p.m. The house is dark. Just a mother, 5 months pregnant, and her little girl asleep in a home no one yet knows they won't wake up in together. At 10:56 p.m., Jason Young swipes his keycard at the Hampton Inn in Hillsville, Virginia. A security camera behind the desk catches him in a gray jacket, signing a form and exchanging small talk with the front desk clerk. He looks casual, tired, unremarkable. He pockets the key, walks to room 421, and disappears down the hallway. The door clicks shut. From that point forward, everything in the system looks normal. The room's door is never opened again that night. No motion sensors go off. No extra entries. On paper, he stayed in, but paper doesn't tell the full story. At around 11:20 p.m., a camera facing the hotel's side parking lot suddenly shuts off. Investigators later confirm it wasn't an error. Someone had manually cut the power. A rock was found wedged under the exit door, keeping it from locking behind anyone who slipped out. That same door allowed someone to leave and return without a keycard, without being recorded. Hours go by. The next timestamp appears at dawn when the camera flickers back on. Prosecutors would later argue that the silence in the footage says everything, that Jason didn't sleep, that he left quietly, crossed the lot to his car, and drove 3 hours back to Raleigh, to Birch Leaf Drive. What happened next didn't unfold in moments. It unraveled in fear. Sometime before sunrise, Michelle is awake. She's wearing sweatpants and a fitted top, her hair pulled back. The treadmill in her bedroom is powered on but idle, as if she was about to start, or just finished. She's 5 months pregnant. The house is still. Then the quiet breaks. The attack is vicious. Investigators describe it as deeply personal. More than 20 injuries. The evidence suggests she never had a chance to react. And through it all, somewhere nearby, Cassidy is awake, barefoot, watching. Later, tiny footprints are found, pressed into the floorboards, streaked from room to room. The blood on the walls rests at the height of a child's hands. Smears on a step stool. Maybe she tried to reach the sink to clean. To help, on the floor, beside Michelle's body, a doll is gently placed like it was tucked in next to her. But when Cassidy is found hours later, her pajamas are spotless. No blood. No diaper. Though she wasn't fully trained yet, someone had cleaned her, wiped her down, changed her clothes. Whoever it was had taken the time to make her look untouched, then left her there, alone, in a house filled with silence, the smell of blood lingering in the air, and the faint whimper of the dog echoing from downstairs. Nothing downstairs is out of place. The TV is off. The kitchen table still set from the night before. Michelle's purse and car keys are right where she left them, on the counter. Only a few things are missing, upstairs. The top drawers of her jewelry box have been opened. Her wedding ring, her engagement ring, gone. Michelle was never known to take them off. They were never found. To investigators, the scene spoke clearly. It looked like a staged break-in, just enough to hint at burglary, but not enough to convince anyone trained to look deeper. There was no forced entry. No valuables missing. No panic. No scramble. Only violence. Focused, intentional, close. The kind of violence that doesn't come from a stranger. The morning of November 3rd, 2006. Arrives quietly. Birch Leaf Drive wakes up the way it always does. Trash trucks roll past. Mailboxes click shut. The air smells like wet pavement and fading autumn. But inside the Young home, there's only stillness. Just after noon, 12:10 p.m., Michelle's sister, Meredith Fisher, glances at her phone. She sees a missed call. A voicemail. It's from Jason. He says he's already on the road, halfway to Virginia for work. But he forgot something he doesn't want Michelle to see. A few printouts left upstairs in his office. Photos of handbags. He says he's thinking of buying for Michelle a surprise gift. He says. He asks Meredith to stop by and pick them up. To help keep the surprise intact. It sounds innocent, even thoughtful. A husband planning a gift, a brother-in-law asking for help, but their anniversary had passed weeks ago. And Meredith knows Michelle isn't expecting anything. Still, it's a quick errand. She doesn't live far. Minutes later, she pulls into the driveway. Michelle's car is still in the garage. Nothing strange there. The garage door's been broken for a while, so Meredith lifts it by hand and steps inside. The dog, Mr. G, is whining somewhere deeper in the house. She calls out as she walks through the kitchen door. Michelle? No response. The first thing she notices is the quiet. No television. No footsteps. No sound of Cassidy's voice. Michelle's purse and car. Keys are still on the counter. Everything looks frozen. Still, a house paused in the middle of an town. Ordinary day. Except the air. The air feels heavy, cold, wrong. Meredith calls out again. Still silence. She walks toward the stairs. At the top landing, something stops her. Dark red smears across the floor, thick, uneven. Stretching toward the bathroom. Her mind scrambles for a reason. Hair dye? Paint? Something harmless? But the light shifts, and the truth becomes impossible to deny. It's blood. Tiny footprints bear unmistakably a child's trail through it. Red-tinged steps walking toward the bedroom. She follows. At the doorway, she sees her sister. Michelle is lying face down beside the bed, still, pale, silent. The air in the room smells metallic and sour. Blood stains the closet door. Pillows scattered across the floor. A child's doll resting beside Michelle's arm, as if placed there gently. Then a sound, a shift under the covers. Meredith freezes, then moves fast. From beneath the blanket, Cassidy appears. Quiet, wide-eyed. She clutches her aunt's arm. Whispers, "Mommy has booze." Meredith pulls her in, holds her tight. She stumbles backward out of the room, fumbling for her phone, trying to shield Cassidy from what she's seen. Her voice shakes as she calls 911. The dispatcher records. Panic, confusion, grief. Meredith sobs as she explains. Blood on the floor. Footprints on the stairs. Her sister not moving. She holds Cassidy close, trying to keep her calm, trying to follow instructions. When police and paramedics arrive, they find everything just as she described. Michelle is already gone. Cassidy, somehow unharmed, but shaking, upstairs. The floor is marked with little prints that tell a story no child should ever be part of. By the time Birch Leaf Drive is blocked off and word reaches Jason Young, Michelle is already lost, and Cassidy is with family. Detectives prepare for a difficult conversation. When they tell a man his pregnant wife was found dead in their home, they expect shock. They expect questions. They expect a father to react instantly, to ask where his little girl is, whether she's safe, whether she was hurt. But that isn't what happens. The moment Jason is notified, his first move isn't toward Raleigh. His first move is toward legal protection. He calls an attorney. When investigators reach out to him, even casually, he shuts down. He won't walk them through the house layout. He won't sit with them to identify what might be missing. He won't answer simple questions about Michelle's routine, who she talked to, what she worried about, whether anyone had bothered her. He refuses to speak about the marriage. He refuses to speak about his travel. He refuses, on the advice of counsel, to say anything at all. Detectives ask how Michelle died. He doesn't ask. They ask about Cassidy. He doesn't ask. They ask him to come to the house. He doesn't go. For the Young and Fisher families, this lands like a blow. Michelle's mother and sister are already shattered by what they found. Jason's distance feels colder than shock. Not grief, not confusion, just distance. To them, it feels wrong. To detectives, it feels telling. If he will not offer answers, they will build the answers themselves. They begin with time. They confirm that on the evening of November 2nd, Jason left the house a little after 6:30 p.m. in his white Ford SUV. They confirm he stopped for gas shortly after leaving Raleigh. That part is straightforward. Credit card logs don't lie. They confirm he got dinner on the road, and that just before 11 p.m. He appeared on camera checking into the Hampton Inn in Virginia. He is calm at the desk, polite, unremarkable. Up to that point, the timeline is clean. And it fractures. His room key is never used again. That night, which should suggest he stayed inside, but around 11:20 p.m., a security camera at a side door shuts off. Later, investigators learn the power wasn't lost. Someone deliberately disabled it. They also find a rock wedged under the emergency exit door, propping it open, allowing someone to leave and return quietly without a key card, without leaving a trace on camera. Meanwhile, in the early morning hours, long before Meredith is sent to the house, multiple people near Birch Leaf Drive report seeing a light-colored SUV in or near the Young's driveway. A newspaper delivery driver describes a vehicle parked oddly between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. A.M. A neighbor recalls a pale soccer mom type SUV in the same spot closer to dawn, and there's something else that morning, along the route between Raleigh and the Virginia state line. In a small town called King, North Carolina, a gas station clerk remembers a tall man in a white SUV pulling up right at first light. He tried to pump gas before the system was active. Store policy required prepaid at that hour. Instead of calmly handing over a card, the man stormed inside angry, flushed, irritated, threw cash on the counter, snapped at the clerk, demanded the pump be turned on. He pumped quickly, left without waiting for his change, and sped off. When investigators show her a photo lineup, she points to Jason Young. To detectives, it's not about the gas. It's the behavior. It matches the agitation they're beginning to see across his entire night. Later that same morning, Jason walks into a scheduled sales presentation at a rural hospital in Southwest Virginia. The very reason he claimed he'd left town. He's supposed to arrive at 10 a.m. He is late. Staff remember his energy. Not devastated, not stunned, but wired, jittery, talking too quickly. He tells them he got lost on the drive. Investigators, who hear the recording later, hear something else. A man running on no sleep. For Michelle's family, this becomes the moment they understand what the investigation is beginning to suggest. For detectives, this is the moment Jason shifts from grieving husband to active suspect. As weeks pass, the investigation moves from grief to evidence. Detectives pull threads until a pattern forms, one they believe no outsider could have created. There is no forced entry, no broken locks, no pried windows, no unfamiliar footprints in the yard. Nothing appears to be stolen except Michelle's wedding and engagement rings, and a few drawers from her jewelry box. The electronics are untouched. Her purse is still on the counter. Her car keys are right where she left them, upstairs. Her blood maps the violence, a trail that stays confined to a single floor. Nothing drips down the stairs. Nothing tracks into the kitchen or garage. The scene is controlled, contained, intensely personal. Michelle wasn't attacked with a weapon like a gun or a knife. She was beaten repeatedly. 20, maybe 30 times. Each strike told investigators what kind of crime this was. Not random. Not a robbery gone wrong. This was rage, directed, close, carried out by someone who needed her to disappear. Then come the small details. The ones that speak louder than fingerprints ever could. The hotel's side camera. The one that went dark just after 11:20 p.m. The door propped open with a small rock. The long stretch of hours where Jason's keycard is never used at the gas station. Clerk in King, North Carolina, remembering a tall man in a white SUV, snapping, throwing $20, leaving before his change. The neighbors on Birch Leaf Drive who remember seeing a similar SUV near the driveway in the earliest hours of the morning. And then, mid-morning, Jason's phone lights up with calls. Brief ones. Scattered. Unusual. To investigators, the pattern looks like panic, the actions of someone trying to appear normal while running through worst-case scenarios. When they access his computer, they find something colder. Search terms like head trauma blackout, anatomy of a knockout, how many blows to make someone unconscious. To detectives, those aren't questions. They're rehearsals. They go through his car, his hotel room, his suitcase. No blood, no obvious trace, no weapon. But that, too, feels deliberate. The absence of evidence suggests something else. A cleanup. Someone who changed clothes, washed up, even took the time to wipe down a child. Not a spontaneous act. A plan. And then the stories begin to surface. Friends speak up. Old messages are uncovered. One woman, someone he'd been calling as often as he called. Michelle admits they were involved. She says Jason told her he was unhappy, that he was thinking about leaving. Another woman remembers him showing up at her door when Michelle was out of town. Former fiancé recalls what his anger looked like when it snapped. The hollow stare. A broken windshield. The hole in her wall that stayed there for weeks. Prosecutors begin stitching the pieces together, a narrative that, to them, feels complete. A man stuck in a marriage he no longer wanted, facing a second child. More bills. More expectations. Someone who, for months, had been telling others he was ready to walk away. Only prosecutors believe he didn't just want freedom. He convinced himself he could take it. By the time the sun rose over Raleigh that Friday morning, Michelle was gone, and the life they built together had been torn apart. In December 2009, 3 years after Michelle's death, Jason Young is arrested at his home in Brevard County, North Carolina. The charge: first-degree murder. Years of quiet investigation, dozens of interviews, and hundreds of leads had all come together. And now, the accusation was simple. Not a stranger. Not a burglar, but the husband. Someone with motive, opportunity, and time. In 2011, the first trial begins inside the Wake County Courthouse. Reporters pack the hallways. The gallery is full. The prosecution begins with a story, sharpened by time. They tell the jury Jason didn't sleep at the hotel that night, that he drove back to Raleigh in the dark, entered his home before sunrise, and ended his wife's life while their 2-year-old daughter slept just steps away. They say it was deliberate, premeditated, carefully executed. He had a plan to kill, and a plan to get away with it. Their case isn't built on DNA or fingerprints. It's built on patterns, on gaps in timing, surveillance, and behavior. They walk the jury through every key moment. The camera that was unplugged, the door left open, the scattered calls, the odd behavior, the emotional fault lines inside a marriage strained by infidelity and frustration. Then, in a rare move, Jason takes the stand. Most defendants don't, but he does. He admits to the affairs, to the arguments, to being selfish, even cruel. He says he let Michelle down in ways that still haunt him, but he swears one thing. He didn't kill her. His voice stays steady as he insists he was asleep in Virginia, arguing that the state's version is built on coincidence and suspicion. He points to the missing physical proof: no weapon, no blood, no witness placing him near the house, and pleads for logic instead of assumption. The jurors deliberate for days. 8 vote to acquit, 4 vote to convict. The divide holds. The judge declares a mistrial. Jason walks out on bond, back into a world split between those who believe him and those who absolutely don't. A year later, the state tries again. The 2012 retrial opens in the same courtroom, with the same judge, but the tone is sharper. Prosecutors rebuild their story piece by piece. They call former partners who speak about the affairs, the secrecy, the promises. They replay the Hampton Inn footage that goes black at 11:20 p.m. They call the gas station clerk who remembers the tall, agitated man in a white SUV at daybreak. And then they bring in something more delicate, something the defense cannot cross-examine. Cassidy. Investigators testify that months after the murder, the little girl began reenacting scenes with her dolls. She hit one doll gently and said, "Mommy has red stuff all over." Then, "Mommy is getting a spanking for biting." The courtroom goes silent. Prosecutors call it the only voice the jury will ever hear from the last witness in that house. The defense argues she was too young, that trauma distorts memory. That grief is being shaped into evidence, but this time, the momentum does not shift. When the jury returns, the foreman speaks a single word: guilty. Jason Young is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge describes the crime as sustained, purposeful, and merciless, saying it ended only when the person responsible physically could not continue. Appeals follow almost immediately. His lawyers argue the jury was influenced by outside information, civil rulings, custody disputes, past judgments not directly tied to the criminal case. For a moment, it seems they might win. An appellate panel agrees and orders a new trial, but the state's higher courts overturn that decision, reinstating the verdict and finalizing the case. Today, Jason Young remains in state custody, serving his sentence in a North Carolina correctional facility. It is the final chapter of a case that began on a quiet Raleigh cul-de-sac and ended in a courtroom where every secret, every motive, and every lie was laid bare. Nearly 20 years have passed since police tape sealed off Birch Leaf Drive. Seasons have shifted. The neighborhood has moved on, and the story that once dominated Raleigh headlines now lives quietly in public record. By early 2025, official documents list Jason Young, now around 50, as a state inmate in North Carolina's Department of Corrections. The listing is simple: a name, an identification number, and a sentence that will not expire: life imprisonment without parole. He remains where the court placed him, convicted of killing his wife, Michelle Fisher Young, and the unborn son she carried, Cassidy, the little girl who once walked through her mother's blood in fear and confusion, was placed into Michelle's family's care soon after Jason's arrest. She grew up away from the cameras, surrounded by the same people who had loved her mother. Public photos of her stop before she becomes a teenager. After that, her life becomes private, protected, as if everyone understood that she deserved a chance to start again. There were never any other arrests. No mysterious intruders. No overlooked suspects. Detectives never found a second set of footprints, never uncovered the missing weapon, never recovered Michelle's rings. What they did find, what the jury accepted, was enough: A locked house. A marriage unraveling. A man who left in the night and returned before dawn. They built their conclusion from the pieces that remained. Rage. Opportunity. The silence that followed. And in the end, that conclusion became the truth that mattered. A young mother. A child who saw more than she could ever explain. A family who refused to stop asking questions until the justice system finally answered. Michelle Young's life ended inside the home she built, but her name, her story, and the strength of those who refused to let her fade, those remain. Some stories stay with us not just because of the crime, but because of what they reveal. The murder of Michelle Young reminds us that danger doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it grows quietly inside the life we think is safe. It reminds us that silence, avoidance, and unchecked anger can quietly turn familiar homes into places of sorrow. That every warning dismissed, every bruise overlooked, can carry consequences deeper than anyone expects. Let Michelle's story be both a memory and a message that justice is rarely immediate, but persistence matters. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. That small action helps these voices stay alive. Join us tomorrow as we share another story equally haunting, equally human, and one you won't want to miss.